Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. Another day, another fun and fabulous guest, another German. I keep finding them all. No, Chris has been before. Chris from the Philosophers Game is here today to talk about Galadriel and Unknown Husband. No, just joking, Celeborn. Chris, welcome. Thank you for coming. Are you excited as I am to talk about the Lady Galadriel?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and nice to be here. I'm honored, and of course, always nice to talk about such very important characters of the lore, like Galadriel, and to some degree Celeborn too, even though he's probably not as important. But that's sometimes it has to be this way around, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good, it's good that there are examples like that sometimes the husband is the arm candy, and he's not as important as the wife, and we'll talk about that now. I just wanted to talk in German. I just told Chris I'll be very confused. So it is very weird
Yeah,
because before the recording, we were talking in German about the weather, how British of us, by the way. And yeah, this is very confusing. So excuse us, the two Germans. But no, yeah, it is, as you said, we don't have many female characters in Tolkien's world. And then we have this really powerful, really important, living through all the ages, always, be well, she's most of the time she is there and present during important events. And so we have a female character that fulfills that role, and I think that should put an end to all the critics saying Tolkien couldn't write really good female characters and roles. I think Galadriel proves these people wrong.
yeah, for sure,
Hmm.
100%. It's like she's yeah. It is kind of unusual. As you said, there are not that many female characters of this significance in Tolkien's works, but you have at least when you find a female character like Galadriel, she's like she has the extra portion of importance and power, and very unusual character too. I think very mystical. There's
Hmm.
some details. If you would ask me about it, I couldn't even give you a really good answer. Like
Yeah.
what's the deal with her mirror and so on.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, which
yeah,
is a bit
pretty
witchy,
fascinating.
right? So
Yeah,
in her character, you can find a lot of fairy tale traits, right? She's the beautiful princess from a royal house, but then she's also said to be really tall and powerful, but then she's wise, but then she has this witchy power, which she learns from, a Maiar, basically. So, as you say, she is very mysterious, and her age and the way she's described, I always like how he describes her by not describing her, because yes, of course he tells us about the hair and everything, but she appears to be very ageless and you can't really tell. So he goes into, yeah, very unspecific specifics when talking about her, which is interesting.
it's true. It's a good point. And yeah, in addition, also we probably will briefly dive into that too. Also, several versions of some
Yes.
parts of her life exists, and
Yeah.
that makes it always a bit complicated to really discuss her, to consider
Yeah.
what is canon, how many children does she have, and so on.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. And would you agree that, let's maybe start there. So, why did Tolkien do that? Why did he revise and go back to especially her story so often? And why are there three, four, five different versions of Galadriel, as you say, Um, was she in love with, so was somebody else in love with her? Was something else going on there? Did she have one child or two children? Was she the founder of Eregion? Wasn't she? Like, so many questions, right? Why do you think? Is that because of her role, in the later part, in the third age, in the story and events of the Lord of the Rings, and then he changed his mind? Was it because people kept asking questions? Was it because, and I think that is my solution, because she was so important to him and he wanted to get her story right, and he changed his mind. He was like somebody, when you write things and you sometimes change the story. His problem was some of the things, like in the Lord of the Rings, were already published, but he had so many notes and whatnot about her, and he often changed the version. So why do you think that was, and what should it tell us?
Yeah, I guess there are definitely. I would say there are multiple components to this. Of course, I could really
Hmm.
imagine that her importance in Lord of the Rings definitely maybe made Tolkien realize that she maybe needs more background story. But I think he also really liked the character in a way
Yeah,
and found her concept
yeah.
interesting and fitting. Like he also added Tom Bombadil to his world, and many would say a
Hmm.
modern editor would just edit those chapters out
Yeah,
because they lead nowhere. But Tolkien really liked
yeah,
this mythological aspect, and I think
yeah,
probably something very similar goes on with Galadriel. While
yeah,
with Tom Bombadil, it's more enigmatic, so he doesn't want to give you the answers to
yeah.
who he is and exactly what it works. But for Galadriel, I guess he really tried to implement her much better and stronger
Hmm.
into his lore and his background story and
Hmm.
the details and sources and so on, because it's strange to have this character and in a world that's so important later, but you don't know how she get into this position. And I think
Yeah.
this might also a very big reason for it, because the how did she become the ruler of Lothlórien, for example? That
Hmm.
in of itself is like a very difficult topic, and
Hmm.
I think Tolkien was a bit concerned about it and tried to
Yeah.
find solutions for it. And that's when he started
Well, he
iterating
killed
this
off.
character a lot.
Yeah, and he killed off, then finally the son of the last king. So basically, yeah. No, you're right. But you can see he wanted to give her a full and good and fulfilling journey as well. And I think that was important for him. She's one of the few completely, like, her story has a beginning, a middle, like it's climactical, and in the end she gets her happy end. So it's a very, you as a reader, yes, there are many questions we still have about her, but you as a reader are very content and very happy about, if you have all the additional material, about Galadriel's story, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, yes, for sure. It is quite. There's a lot in a way about her, even though it's often different versions.
Yeah.
But overall, you can form out a very satisfying
Yes.
picture how it went. And
Yeah.
of course, it's always like in a mythology, you often have contradicting sources and so on. So
Mhm.
that is a thing for many other characters in Tolkien's works too.
Yeah. Yeah. But in a way, it reminds me of real history. And this is, in a way, what
Yeah,
he wanted to create, no? Because in real history, there are different narrators, right? And very often the winners write history, right? But there
yeah,
are different people tell you different stories. And very often, the truth lies in the middle or wherever. And this is very, very similar to what we have of Galadriel. There are so many versions. So it's almost like it's real. It's almost like real life. Somebody tells you this. No, she went through Moria. No, she founded Eregion. No, she wasn't. Like, it's really cool. Like, you have different people telling you different their version of Galadriel. So this makes it feel, and this is why I say you're very satisfied with her as a character.
yeah. Absolutely
Hmm.
true. It
Yeah.
really works out this way, and some other
Hmm.
characters too. But I guess she's really special, especially considering that Tolkien kind of, yeah, I always say buffed her a lot.
Yes.
Makes it interesting. So her significance in the past law became even more important. That's
Yeah.
always really fascinating. That
Yeah.
I think kind of rare.
It is.
Can't remember.
Yes.
Think of another character that basically its importance grew so much over the different versions to the point where she becomes like the second most important elf, probably to powerful elf to Feanor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in a way, there are different versions of Fëanor as well. And there were
Yeah,
versions of Fëanor, where he was just a random dude and not as important. And also his important, but again, he dies pretty early on in the Legendarium. He dies literally entering Middle Earth. Few days later, he's dead.
yeah,
And she lives on, and I think that is obviously that gives her story, some length and some additional footage. But I think with Fëanor and these two, the two most important, most powerful, elves, it's interesting. It's both of them.
yeah, yeah. That is absolutely true. And even though some of these hints you also find already in Lord of the Rings, for example,
Yes.
in Appendix B, there's also
Yeah.
the mention about Celeborn, kingsman of Thingol. His
Yeah.
wife was Galadriel, greatest of elven women, and yeah, that already puts it into a perspective. But I guess
Yeah.
it goes even beyond that at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So let's maybe start at the beginning because she was almost there from the beginning. Not fully, but So she is of the Nord. I mean, she counts herself amongst the Noldor, although we will see throughout her life, she has Teleri and Vanya heritage, right? So
Yes.
her grandmother and her grandfather were king and queen, the second ruling queen of the Noldor, Indis from the royal house of the Vanyar. Again, her parentage, is she the daughter or the sister to the king? Whatever she is from the royal line of the Vanyar. And her grandfather is Finwë, founder of the house, of the royal line of the Noldor. So already here you see of her importance because then her father Finarfin, the youngest son of said King Finwë, he marries a Teleri, right? She it's Earvan, and she is the daughter of Olwe, also from a royal house and line of the Teleri. So not that she is, offspring of all the important royal lines, but all the three elven houses. And I think embodying that into, into one character, or I mean, she had brothers as well.
Yeah.
But that just alone shows you, okay, this person will become very important.
Yeah, of course. It's like her position in the family tree is already pretty
Yeah.
extraordinary, you could say, and
Yeah.
it's I guess continues with we later look at Celeborn a bit. He also
Yes.
has his
Mhm.
heritage or his changed a bit and
Mhm.
pretty that was also a difficult topic. So
Yeah,
in this
what would
way,
be what is your head canon? What is your law? Because and everybody can think what they want, right? Tolkien very often didn't say this is the truth. I mean, the truth is basically just in the Lord of the Ring and the appendices. Everything else he didn't publish. He wrote letters, yes, the Silmarillion, but his son published it. It wasn't finished. So what is your Celeborn? What would you say is his heritage?
So I would simply go with what we find in the published works
Yeah.
of Tolkien, published in
Yeah.
his lifetime, because
Mhm.
it's always hard to say how to which position those work in progress texts that are published after his death, and probably
Yeah.
not intended to be published just yet. And Tolkien was just iterating and fine
Yeah.
tuning them still, and had formed
Yeah.
his different opinions over time.
Mhm.
So we have like a strong indicator in Lord of the Rings. I just read this passage. It says,
Mhm.
"For a time, Celeborn dwelt close to Lune, kinsman of Thingol." So that already
Yeah.
pretty much confirms the Cinder heritage. That is from Appendix B in Lord of the Rings. And
Yeah.
on top of that, we also find this note in The Road Goes Ever On. That is like collection of songs. For example, the Elberest song is in there and so on. Tolkien published it, came out in the 60s, so during the lifetime of Tolkien worked on it, and there's also some background information in this hard to get book these days or publication these days.
Yeah.
And in it also says that he is a cinder. So that is in my head canon the way I see him, though there is a version where he's not a cinder though. But still, I think this works best for how I imagine a Celeborn.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I would go one step further. So I do all these funny family trees. Maybe if I don't forget, I can put one in here with the little tiny pictures. I love that. I'm a nerd. So I think my headcanon is so Elmo had a son. Elmo, brother to Olwe and Thingol, and Elmo had a son, Galadorn. And Celeborn is the son of Galadorn. So he is, like you said, from the royal house, and kinsman to Thingol. And I do think, because you see that in Tolkien very often, that important elves who are lord and ladies, who become king and queens, they always come from a royal line. Tolkien lived during a time where that was still of importance, right? Look at the British monarchy, right? Somebody marrying, I don't know, king, whatever his name was, but it wasn't, at that time, it was impossible to marry a commoner, right? And that, I think, that was rooted within him in his, like that is how people thought during that time. And although he was forward thinking, and he sometimes questions, is that person fit to rule and all of that, it's not, he accepts monarchy as it is, like eat it and die, but I think that is important to him. And I do think, therefore, that very often, if you talk about Thranduil, Orofer, his father, I do think these people were also from the royal house, of somehow related to Thingol. Otherwise, they would not have been accepted by the others as their rulers and kings. That is what I think. We don't have proof of that, but yeah. So I do think he stems from Elmo. That would be my headcanon for his parentage.
Yeah, that would work. I think it's also mentioned in the Unfinished Tales.
Yes.
Galadon, and it's kind of interesting that he puts him there, because it also makes him somewhat related to Galadriel. It's kind of funny.
Exactly, because Eärwen, Galadriel's mother, is the daughter of Olwe. So okay. And Olwe was the brother of Elmo. So anyway, but it's still okay, right? So don't freak out, people. It's not Meglin and Idril cousin, or brothers and sis, like Turin and Niniel. So no. Anyway, so good. So and one last thing about that, I had that thought earlier. What do you think? Do you have any other example? Because she was born in the Undying Lands. She is a light elf, right? So that makes her more powerful, blah, blah, blah. He, Celeborn, her husband, wasn't. Can you think of any other of the important elves, royal lines, whatever, that married somebody that was not from the Undying Lands? There is no exact. Well, I mean, no.
I have nobody in mind for
Because
moments.
because Turgon's wife, all of them, they all met each other already in the Undying Lands. Elenwe was also from Aman and born in Aman. And Naira, Fingolfin's wife, like all of them were born in Aman.
Yeah. Can't think of an exception to that.
I mean, Idril married a human, but he was a human. He didn't, like that was different.
Yeah, I guess that was probably different. That is true. But though he later became an elf, so in that way, maybe that
I know.
you can make an argument for it. But
yeah. Yeah.
It's
But that's
unusual, you can put
interesting.
it.
Yeah, it is unusual, no? Yeah. Just came to me anyway. But again, that shows you, there was a bit of a, well, I wouldn't say imbalance, but yeah, in a way, it was an imbalance as well.
Yeah, it it's interesting. Also, that Tolkien, had a version where, Celeborn also came from Aman, so
I know.
also would be one of the Light Elves too, so he
Yeah.
worked on a version to change this, difference, but
Yeah.
I think it doesn't matter too much anyway, so
No, and it doesn't lead to conflict because very often in real life, but also in movies and literature, that leads to conflict. There are many female rulers and queens, and then when the husband is just he doesn't become the queen. He's not even a co-ruler. He just sits there next to her on the throne and does nothing because he's powerless. That often leads to conflict with Galadriel and Celeborn, and we will go through their story. You don't feel that. You feel he is very content. He plays his role. He very often aids her, in because she is so foresighted, and he goes with it and he aids her. But it doesn't. I mean, we don't know what's going on, 8 a.m. in the morning in their bedroom or their home. But still, you feel it is very you know in that way a very equal and positive and harmonious marriage.
yeah, agreed. It never came to me that there was, like, a lot of conflict. All their
No.
life over the decisions they made could be somewhat, understood. I think the only thing where you could maybe interpret something into it a little bit, but I would not really agree on that, is when in one version later when, Galadriel leaves Eregion, Celeborn, stays behind because I think he doesn't want to go through Moria or for some other reasons, but
But
yeah.
there's yeah, but there's and we can come to that, but there's a version that that tells you the reason, because he stays behind because she is so foresighted. Because why does he stay behind? He stays behind because Celebrimbor and the Gwaithir Myrdain, they took the power. So this is why Galadriel, they basically revolted, and he stays behind to keep an eye on them. And she goes somewhere to start, a new kingdom, to connect with other kingdoms, right? So she is so foresighted to do that, and he stays behind to still, trying to persuade the people and still calming down the situation. It's not. That's how I felt that was the reason.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I meant with there's a reason for it too.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yeah.
as you said, they revolted. He stays behind.
Yeah.
Maybe she also sees that there's also the notion of Galadriel, um, seeing that only the all the three peoples combined could withstand Sauron
Yeah.
anyway. So of course it's
Yeah.
important to get an eye on
Yeah.
them and to make new contacts there too.
Yeah.
There's definitely some foresight going on there,
Hmm.
so there's definitely a reason.
Hmm. Good, but let's take 1,000 years. Let's take a step back, 1,000 years earlier. So we learn that her hair is of the uttermost importance, and that Feanor, and the whole book, is called the Silmarillion. Um, so the idea came from her hair catching the light of the two trees, which in a way must have been very beautiful, very. This is the fairy tale aspect of her, I find. And yeah, he got the idea to create the Silmarils, by looking at her hair and seeing what her hair did with the two trees. So he thought, oh cool, so her hair can capture the light, so I will build something that can capture the light as well. So she was she was the muse basically behind this.
Yeah, that's a very interesting detail that Fëanor came to this conclusion because of the
Yeah.
hair. It is very fascinating, and as you say,
Mm-hmm.
almost a bit fairy tale-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Little detail there. There's even this story, maybe you want to mention it, of him asking for some of her
Yeah.
hairs, and she would refuse to give him some, and later she gives 3 to Gimli.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah, it's so cool. And the detail is because she asked Gimli, what would you do with my hair? Like what's happening? Why are you asking for this? And he gives her an explanation which makes her happy because he says, I want to treasure it. I don't want to, this will be an heirloom of my people. He doesn't say, I want to create the most powerful, beautiful, blah, blah, blah object to capture the light of the two magnificent. No, because that is what Fëanor wanted to do. And she, in her foresight, saw, oh, this doesn't really sound good. This doesn't sound like a good thing. But when Gimli told, because she didn't give her hair, Gimli asked, and she was like, oh no, okay, here, I like you, have my hair. No, she asked him, and his answer, she was okay with the answer. She liked the answer because it was something good. Um, so that shows you the difference.
yeah, definitely. Also, I felt like there was a component of being very humble with Gimli's request. I really like it how it's depicted in the film. He really almost doesn't, or in the extended edition, he almost doesn't
Yeah.
dare to ask.
I know. Yeah.
It's kind
It's
of cute,
really
and
it
how I
is. Yeah.
imagine Fëanor, his request probably would have been worded quite differently.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And way creepier. Anyway, so she was, as we said, from Finafin's line, and that is one of my questions. Um do you, because I always had the feeling like of all the elves in Aman, and actually anywhere, he was the wisest, the most, not foresight. Foresight is different, but yeah, I would say wise. And Tolkien even mentions that. So why does he now? I mean, she obviously, that's her father, and that is a trait she inherited or learned from her father. So, but do you think she's wiser? Because all the decisions Finarfin makes by turning back, listening to the Valar and seeing, oh, this is wrong what we are doing, because she's still going after everything, that happened. She still went to Middle-earth. She still wanted those lands of her own to rule. Don't you think Finarfin is wiser than his daughter?
Yeah, I could definitely imagine that he seems to be very wise. He makes all the right decisions in his life,
Yeah.
and he stays back. He does not come under any curse.
No.
He sees he foresees the problems, but on the other side, one must also maybe consider probably it's a difficult consideration though because of the time problem. But Galadriel at this point was also still very young. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't say she was
True.
inexperienced in a way, but Finarfin was probably quite a bit older than her, and
I
of
don't,
course,
but elves had their children in the first, I don't know, 200, in their first 200 years or 300 years of age. They had them pretty early on. Well, I mean, she was the fourth child. So maybe, yeah.
it's
I don't,
difficult because
yeah.
in Nature of Middle Earth, Tolkien published these when do elves have children?
Yeah, I know.
How I think they are only considered adult with 1,000 years or something
Mhm.
in one version, and so on. It's complicated, and then
Yeah,
in
it
on
is.
top of that, we have this um, one Valiant year. At this time, the sun and moon were not created in the mythology, and so
Yeah.
we have not solar
Yeah.
years, but Valiant years. And depending on the version, they're either 9.582 or
Yeah.
10 or 144 solar
Yeah.
years. So the
Now it's
factor is quite.
144. Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
very
it was even
different.
before the 144 was a known detail, but it was usually people
Oh,
refused it because it does not seem to fit, and now it got
no.
more
Yeah.
popular again because of the release of Nature of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Nature of Middle Earth book
Yeah.
last year, and yeah, now we are all confused to how to. Now it's just a trap,
I
calculating
know.
dates or doing
I
something with the Valiant years. It's
I
difficult
know.
to say.
I
But
know.
still, if we look into the Silmarillion, for example, we also have one of my favorite. It's not my favorite Galadriel quote, but I find a very interesting one, where Melian asks her, "Shouldn't the king of Doriath know about what happened?" And she says, "Yeah, maybe, but not of me." And I always feel like that's a sassy Galadriel,
Yeah,
and she probably would have answered differently, maybe a few thousand years later. I don't know, hard to
yeah,
say, but. I feel always like maybe it's very interpretation
yeah.
heavy by my side, but I feel like there was also some development in her wisdom. I wouldn't say she is
Yes.
unwise in her use or
Yeah.
when she leaves there, but there's still maybe some improvement
No,
to be
and
left.
yeah, and that is perfectly fine. That is the journey she goes on. She goes to Middle Earth, to get tested because she knows in Valinor nothing ever will happen because it's basically boring there. There's no war. There's not. I mean, yeah, her grandfather dies, gets killed, whatnot. But there's nothing. There's no challenge. There's nothing. As you say, she's a young elf. She's clever. She is not power hungry, but she's interested in the world. And then, she learns of somebody who says, come on, let's go. And she grabs this opportunity for different reasons. And
Yeah.
now another question for you. Do you think she wanted also, because Fëanor claims all this is to revenge his father, which I personally don't agree. 80% he wanted to go after the Silmarils.
Yeah.
This is why he wanted to go. Yes, he wanted to revenge his father as well. But when you listen to his speech, it's about don't you want to revenge your king people? And these people are holding us back, and they are of Morgoths. They are like Morgoth. They are the same. They are brothers and sisters. So why would we listen to them? And he stole my precious gems and whatnot. But this is more about when he's rallying them up, he claims this is about revenge as well. But no, it's not just, it's 80% he wants the Silmarils back. Obviously, he can't tell that to people. He's not like, leave your home, leave everything behind to find my jewels. And in the paragraphs before, you learn of his greedy love, that his love for them became greedy. If you would have told them that, if I, would tell you, Chris, let's go on an adventure because I don't know, whatever, like a cool reason. If I tell you, let's go on an adventure and revenge somebody because he stole, I don't know, my watch or my ring and it's mine, it's my precious, then you would be like, Helen, no, I'm not doing that, right? So I really do feel she had her own reasons, but do you think she also wanted to revenge? Was that anything she thought of? Because she will learn she's the one who loses all of her family.
Yeah, that's true. I don't see really a lot of revenge. And I don't see that
No.
this was also Tolkien's intention. There are multiple things because in the Unfinished Tales we can read that she does not want under the I hope I pronounce it correctly, the tutelage of the
Yeah.
Valar in Aman, and that is definitely a reason. And she wants, of course, also like realms to rule and prosper
Yeah.
and have like a purpose for basically in her life
Mm-hmm.
as a very royal elf, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, there's also a version where Galadriel is not leaving with with
Yes.
Inoldor and Feanor, but she
Yeah.
goes before on a ship and sails over. So
Yeah.
Tolkien really wanted to separate
Mm-hmm.
her
From the
decision
kinslaying. Yeah.
making
Yeah.
and from the kinslaying. She even defended then in this version with her husband or
Yes.
later husband Celeborn,
Yeah.
who
She
in this
fought
version is
against
also from
Fëanor.
Aman.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
fought against Feanor and his men defending the Teleri elves in Aman,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then sailed over to Middle Earth, independent of all this
Yeah.
doom of the Noldor.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is so. So I don't see a revenge motive here. Tolkien clearly
Mm-hmm.
wanted her to be separate from this concept.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you also agree, and this is the feeling I had. Look, first of all, she was a daughter. She had three elder brothers, Finrod, Angrod, Angnor. So there were 4 children. She was the youngest of the 4, and she was a daughter. She would never have inherited anything, right? She could have married somebody from a royal line. That could have been something, a way to rule, maybe. Um, but staying back in Amman, she knew her fate would be of a consort or whatever, that was the role these women had at that time. We never heard that Findis or any of the other, like her aunts, like the direct children of Finwë, they ruled over anything. They didn't have their own little kingdoms, whatever. So, and we know she wanted to rule over lands of her own. So that was one of the reasons, right? She left.
Yeah, for sure. You are right. In addition, of course, in Amman, if an elf died or would be killed, he could re-embody and also return. So
Yeah.
it's like a very
Basically.
static affair there in this,
Yeah.
and there's not much you can basically
No.
do as if you're just the if you have 3 older brothers,
Yeah.
then not much will
Yeah.
happen. And even if the brothers have also children and so on, it becomes very difficult for you to maybe
Yeah.
become a ruler or get
Yeah.
a higher position. So
Yeah.
it was,
And
as you said at the beginning, kind of boring.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And yeah, she wanted to be challenged, right? She knew she was strong. She knew she was intelligent. So these people, they don't want, you don't want a job where you just do 24/7 the same thing 5 days a week. No, you want a challenge. And this is how I felt about her. By the way, she resembles very much her cousin Aredel, one of my favorite elves, as well. Fingolfin's daughter, which was her cousin, and she resembles her in that. So these 2 women are depicted as very adventurous. They were restless. They always went from there to there. Like Galadriel's journey in the first and second age of Middle Earth is like here, 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 here. She was everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And Arada was the same. The boys, not so much. They founded their realms, and then they went on. But again, it was way more. It took forever for her to find a realm of her own, where
Yeah.
she could rule. And I do think that also shows her growth, because she could have said, I'm your queen. I mean, there were 2 things, we'll come to that, speaking against it. It was, she was, yes, of a Teleri, but not Cinder Teleri, obviously kind of the same, but they split up very early on. So if she would rule over Cinder elves in Middle Earth, being of the Noldor, um, problematic. But I think the Galadriel would have accepted her after Amdir died. I think she could have called herself queen, but I think her growth moment was to just be humble and call herself lady and be more of a servant to them than a ruler.
Yeah, for sure. That is also an interesting detail, that she never becomes like a queen. Also,
Yeah.
and as you said, she travels so much around, probably also due to the versions that exist.
Yes.
In a way, she's also very Noldor in this
She is,
in
yes.
this aspect, because Noldor always had the desire to seek knowledge.
Yeah.
They're always seeking something, if that makes sense,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's also the case for her. While the Teleri are maybe a bit different in that regard, and probably
Mhm.
really love the ocean and the water and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that regard, that is truly a humble moment for her, that she
Yes.
does not do this. And even in the older version, it's not like she goes to Lothlórien and claims, I'm the lady now of
Mm-mm.
Lothlórien, but her,
Mm-mm.
there in these versions, she had a son, Amros, and he becomes the ruler there. He let
Yeah.
him establish his realm there and goes elsewhere for the time being, and then
Mhm.
travels back and forth.
Mhm. Yep. Um, Let's stay for a moment in Aman and then she can leave Aman. Question for you, another one that came into my mind because I'm really fascinated and we know so little of this character. I love Finarfin. Like I find him fascinating and I always imagine what's he doing in Aman? Well, all his children, you must imagine that, all his children left. So he stayed behind, and his children are gone, and they are all dead except Galadriel, and she returns. Yes, re-embodied, blah blah blah, but in a way. And did he try to pursue them to turn back? Do you think that ever, because they met for a brief moment, because his host came last, I think, right? So
Yeah,
Fëanor's host was first in Aqualonde, starting the kinslaying. Then I think Fingolfin's host came in,
yeah,
and I think Fingon led that. I'm not. I didn't read back on it before we recorded, but I think something like that. So Fingolfin's host was second, and then Finarfin's, who was his smallest host, came third, and they were like, what is even happening here? Obviously they didn't see what started it all. Do you think at that moment in time, did he say, when they then decided, they saw, okay, well, he left with the ships, they saw what's still flat, they saw the burning ships, they knew, okay, we can't go, so he turns back. Do you think he ever talked to his children and said, do you really want to do that? Why not come home with. How was that? Like,
yeah. I think it would be strange for him to not
yeah,
talk to his children. Like he, as we already established, he's pretty a wise person, and
yeah,
as a result, I think a wise person would at least try to talk to them and explore their reasoning for
yeah,
going.
yeah,
That's how probably I would imagine him. Of course,
yeah.
I can imagine wasn't happy that they probably left, but I also can't imagine that he tried to force them to not leave or anything. He
No,
basically,
no.
I
Yeah,
assume, accepted their decisions, and
yeah.
maybe he was a Noldor himself. Probably could see why they wanted to leave for these new realms beyond, and even when they would have to eat the consequences. But
See,
yeah,
I think he was the brother who just went because his two other brothers went, and I think he followed Fingolfin's lead, and Fingolfin did it because he wanted to prove to his brother and new king that you can trust me. Whatever you say, you're my new king now. I trust you. Please, let's bring this family rift. Like, let's not make this deeper. I accept you as my king. I won't speak against you. Whatever you say, wherever you lead, I'll follow you. And I think on his own, Finarfin never would have made that oath, but he followed rather Fingolfin and went with it because he also didn't want to make the rift in that family, and that was horrendous, right? The three brothers being like, um so I think that was his reason. I don't think he wanted anything in Middle Earth. And I don't think Finarfin would have been happy in Middle Earth with all the battles and all that. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I feel he loved this peaceful realm. And I do think he was a very good king because he stayed back. So he must have been the king of because his father was dead, his brother was gone, and the other brother was dead. So he must have ruled of. I mean, I don't think Indis ruled. So he must have ruled over the left Noldor in
yeah,
Aman.
I
And
think
I
it's also mentioned
imagine,
somewhere.
yeah, and I imagine that was a good time for the Noldor, and he was a good king, and he enjoyed it. I don't think he would have, imagine him like on those battlefields, like Fingolfin. No,
Yeah,
he's
he's
not that
different in that regard.
character. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I
yeah,
also can't imagine, like, he's the character who stays back. That is his purpose, and
yes,
does the
yeah,
wise and smart decisions, and the
yeah,
others are just more
yeah,
driven by other motives that
yeah.
they simply can't do this. That makes him.
And
I mean, we often complain about Fëanor being like a crazy elf, but he's also a very interesting elf. Makes the story
yes,
very spicy, if that makes sense.
you need
And
those characters. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. He's
Yeah.
a much needed character. If every character would be Finarfin, we would have no story.
No, it will be boring. But then, the Noldor that stayed back in Aman, they deserved a good king. Imagine what they what they went through. I think a lot of the other elves looked at them and were like, "What the f did your people do? They killed, they stayed back behind. The Valar must have been angry. Everybody would be like, this is literally like the family of a mass murder is still, around in your town.
Yeah,
I think everybody is like, okay, I'll keep an eye on you. And I think, the Noldor that were left there really deserved and needed a good and wise ruler, who calmed the situation down. And I think that was Finarfin's role. And I really like that. And I always imagine he, teeny tiny bit, had his hand. And I also think in this maybe they had their hand in pleading with the Valar in the end to let Galadriel come home.
yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
Depending on the version, though.
Yes.
It's always
Yeah.
because in some
Good.
versions the band does not exist and so on. It's
I know.
also a
I know. I know.
complicated topic
I know. I know.
for people not
But
knowing.
yeah, but good. So she reaches the promised land, and yeah, well, there. I mean, again, like her journey is. Let's not go too deep where she was when. I think the most important uh, points or regions where she was, I think for her, very important was Thingol's kingdom of Doriath, because she learned a lot, and she lost in a way her mother. She's not dead, but she didn't have her mother anymore, and we learned she left quite young-ish. And I do think Melian acted very much as a mother figure to her. And you have that very often in Tolkien, like adopted fathers, like Círdan, what Círdan did with Gil-galad later with Elrond, even Medros and all these people to Elrond and Elros. Like is you have these family dynamics not being your real parents, and very very often, and they teach those kids really good things.
Yeah,
And I think Melian did that with Galadriel, although she knew and she sensed something really bad has happened, but Galadriel didn't want to tell her the full truth, which again shows you it's a bit shady as well, but I really like that Melian taught her so many important and good things. And this now comes what you said in the beginning, this witchy thing comes in,
yeah,
because I don't think she had these powers right from she was born in the Undying Lands, the light of the two trees, which makes you more powerful than other elves, is within her. She comes from that really important line, blah blah blah. So she was powerful in her own right. But I think these tricks like bringing down walls, like bringing down Golduldu
Dol
Guldur.
Guldur. Hard to
Say it
say
again,
sometimes.
Chris. Say it again, Chris.
Dol Guldur.
Listen, people. So here's the pro. I loved last time when you corrected me, and so and I was like, I can't say it. I don't know what it was. It was
I didn't want
something.
to correct you.
No, I
I can't
know,
help.
but I like to learn, and I like to roll the R, and I'm able to do it. But Dolguldur, anyway, because her daughter, Melian's daughter, Luthien, did exactly the same with Tolkien Gauroth, so they learned that from Melian, pretty sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting dynamic, especially she's also a Maya that makes Melian unusual in Middle Earth, I would say, at this
Mhm.
time. And in a way, I wouldn't say it was almost like back in home where she probably also had contact to some
Yes.
Maya that might have
Yeah.
to some Maya who
Yeah.
could have taught her several things,
Yeah.
and even access to the Valar. That of course is maybe
Uh-huh.
another level again, but still, it's interesting, and Melian is a very unusual character, in a way very similar to maybe Galadriel and the Noldor,
Yes.
that he also left Aman and went
Yeah.
there to
find her.
seek
Yeah,
find her
yeah,
love, seek a different motivation simply compared to the
yeah.
others, and she's the only Maya we know about that gave birth to a child. So
Hmm.
even though in very early versions the Valar also had children, but that's a
Yeah,
complicated story, Book of Lost
yeah,
Tales stuff. But
yeah. I don't like
it
that version, but yes, yeah, yeah. She did.
it,
She
it
did. Yeah, I
yeah,
love
it's
Melian.
really unusual.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
agreed.
but I do think what the Valar and Maiar taught them back in the Undying Lands wasn't to bring down walls. I'm pretty sure because that was not needed. That was again what they learned there was very boring shit. Like, sorry, but anybody knows I don't like the Undying Lands. It's like literally boring. It's like Germany. The Undying Lands are like Germany. Nothing ever. I always tell my foreign friends like nothing ever happens in Germany. Don't expect like if you ask me how like boring like you don't even want to know. Anyway, so they would never have taught her these things. They would have taught her like boring, like weaving and tapestry weaving and shit like that. Like who wants that? I want to bring down walls, people. So it is cool that Melian taught her the important things to survive in Middle Earth.
Yeah, for sure, and
Yeah.
also Lembas.
Lembas, yes, I like that. Um, good. So she was there. I think that was a very important time for her and her family. And then something super sad because she lived for a time with her brother in Nagothrond. We don't know much about it, but that will be the last time she sees her brother. I'm not sure time wise. Are Angrod and Agnar already dead at that time? Not sure. I think
Mm,
so.
it's a very good question.
I think they die in the Dagor in the battle.
Yeah,
Yes,
they die
they.
in this 450. Finrod dies a bit later. Yeah,
Yes,
I,
yeah,
I'm not 100% sure.
yeah.
That's a
When
really good question.
yeah, because
Probably,
what I imagine she went there because he was the last of her family in Middle Earth,
yeah,
and I think she wanted a lot of things happened. The other two brothers died. I think she wanted to speak to her last living relative and grieve a bit.
yeah, for sure. It's having like a bit of family there, especially if other
Yes.
brothers potentially died. I'm still not 100% sure. Really would need to find this
Yeah.
out, but it would be too difficult right now to
Yeah,
pinpoint
yeah,
the
don't
exact
worry, don't
date.
worry. People in the
And
chat,
yeah,
not
yeah, let
chat,
us
but
know in the
comment
comments
section. Yes.
if you
Yeah.
know. It's possible that they were still alive though, but yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure either
Yeah.
right now. But yeah, seeing family is of course very important. And I mean, the whole endeavor of being in Middle Earth was very difficult, independent of if their brothers already were
Yeah.
died in battle or not. But there was like a consistent threat, even though, of course, at this time Morgoth was contained due to the siege by Fingolfin and so on. But um, still, her uncle died. We have all the troubles with the sons of Feanor and so
Yeah.
on. Still, there were threats and the trying of small wars here and there by Morgoth
Yeah.
and so on. And there were still regions that were basically inaccessible. And
Mhm.
even though in these early times everything worked out quite well, but she was having foresight and wisdom, probably knew that
Mhm.
at some point this might change. It won't last
Yeah.
forever, and that
Yeah.
in of itself makes things quite difficult.
Mhm. Yeah. So she yeah, basically she went there for comfort and for to talk to somebody who's close to her because as you said that it was wartime and she didn't have a real home as well at that time, and that's in a way sad because that's in a way what she also wanted, right? um Good. Then she well, her brother also dies, and the last brother, then Finrod, dies on his quest for the Silmaril, gets killed by Sauron. And I think this is the turning point for her. Morgoth is still the OG Dark Lord. Sauron comes in the Second Age. This is still First Age stuff, but this is why she is so. Obviously, she doesn't know later on that Anatar is Sauron, but she senses something is off. And even later on, when they know, who the necromancer is and all that, I think people don't realize that, but dude killed her brother, her last living brother.
Yeah.
And that she must really hate him. She had her own motive to hate Sauron, not just because he was the Dark Lord and wanted to enslave the world, but because he killed her brother. That's not okay. And his master killed her grandfather. So she experienced a lot of death, right? And very often the people who are left behind, right, they are traumatized by all this. um yeah, so it wasn't an easy and fun time for her in Middle Earth.
Definitely not. Though she also found, at least to the established or more common version,
Yeah,
her love there, her husband.
yeah,
She met Celeborn in most versions. Then
in
there around
Harlindon.
Endorias.
Yeah. Oh, in Doriath. Yeah, right, but they went to Harlindon then. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then they at some point also left
Hmm.
this Beleriand for the eastern part of Middle Earth from
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
perspective of that time on. And then I think it was I made a mistake in one of my videos, because that's why I remember this, before the fall of Nargothrond, and
Yeah.
but around that time basically. So relatively late into the First Age, but at this time she was not already not there anymore. But still, it became the time became more and more difficult, and this conflict. We also have this. We mentioned the dialogue where Melian asked her, "Shouldn't the king of Doriath know about this?" And she said, "Maybe, but not of me."
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
this also basically indicated potential conflict that is coming up, and so on.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
was she was definitely aware of that. There was
Hmm.
trouble on the horizon, and
Yeah.
of course, as we discussed this a moment ago, then you seek your family, consult with your brother, who
Hmm.
was also a phenomenal, very important elf in the history of Finrod,
Yeah.
a very fan favorite always for very good reasons. And
And he loved the humans. And I do think this
yeah,
is why she was so, also trusting her brother's guts and instincts. She liked humans. She was none of these elves who was like, I don't know. She loved them as well, and she trusted them, and she knew you can rely on humans, which a lot of elves didn't.
yeah, that is also a very good point. And also with Celeborn, she had somebody at her side. She married him probably at this time, I think. Not sure if
Hmm.
there's an actual date for that, to be honest.
Don't know.
But yeah, it's that is very. There's a lot of things simply happening in this time that
Yeah.
make also can maybe change your view on things, change your character a bit, and
Yeah.
develop into a certain direction. And yeah, she at some point just said, "Okay, I'm out.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
don't want to hop too far into the future."
Yeah.
If you have still some points left, we should cover.
Yes, Eregion. So, what is your version, the version you like best? Not what you say is true, but the version you like best. Um, because there's one version in the published Silmarillion which just says, Celebrimbor was the founder of Eregion, and basically Galadriel and Celeborn came there and dwelt there, and blah blah blah. And then the whole ring forging and Sauron and Anatar and all that came along. But there's another version which makes it way more spicier, because it makes Celebrimbor a traitor, because Galadriel and Celeborn, actually founded Eregion. They dwelt there for 400-ish years, and with them from Gondolin came Celebrimbor, and he founded the Gwaithir Mirda, and that is still the same. But they then rebelled, Sauron coming in and whatnot, but they then rebelled against the Lord and the Lady, Galadriel and Celeborn, and took over the power. And she didn't want another infight, and I do think they also persuaded him, being an older, him being of the line of Feanor, who was very strong with words, very good with words. His sons, persuaded the kingdom where her brother ruled, Finrod in Nargothrond. They persuaded the people to speak against their king and not follow their king. So they have that power. So Celebrimbor, also kind of probably turned, the people against them and said, no, let's do this now. Let's make magic rings. Let's become powerful. Why can't we be there? There are really cool passages where, Sauron tells them, or Anatar tells them, why don't you want to be as powerful as the Valar in Aman, and why are Elrond and Gil-galad speaking against that? Why do they want to hold you small? Do they want to hold you back? This is what he tells them, and they fall for it. So do you like that version, or do you like what?
Yeah, that's a very good question, which version I like. First of all, maybe you should also briefly mention there had a brief stay in Nenuyal for some time, and there most
Yeah.
likely Celebrian was born. So
Yes.
their first child, probably
Yeah.
as a
Lake
step, it was
Evendim, I
around
think.
300, second age 300, and the foundation of Eregion is second age 750, so
Yes. Yeah.
a bit later. And yeah, when it comes to the version, I think most likely, or whatever version I like most, is the version where basically Celebrimbor and Galadriel and Celeborn found Eregion together, because that makes for me
Yeah.
most sense with now
Mhm.
like having a child and so on, and
Mhm.
the ambition to have like a realm. They don't want to live somewhere under
Yeah.
another one, or another person.
Yeah.
At the same time, you could say, yeah, then why not go with a version where Celeborn and Galadriel found Eregion?
Yeah.
And the answer is for me always very simple but you don't have to agree, of course, because in the Appendix B it clearly says that the Lord of Eregion is
Was
Celebrimbor,
Celebrimbor. Yeah.
and Galadriel and Celeborn are not really mentioned, at least in this context. They are
Mhm.
mentioned also in this text, but not in the context of the foundation.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's only said it's founded by the Noldor in the timeline.
Yeah.
And maybe I can even read it. Celeborn was Lord of Eregion and the greatest of their craftsmen. He was descended from Feanor. And yeah, so in my mind, I have to combine both those versions. The idea that Galadriel and
Mhm.
Celeborn have a motive to found a realm, and
Mhm.
what is written in Lord of the Rings. So in my
Mhm.
mind, it has to be both of them going there, having maybe similar goals, and forming this place. And then, as you already described, as this Anatar suddenly, I think when was it, 1200 second age or so, comes in and tries to first of all with Gil-galad and his realm, and
Mhm.
there he is basically denied access, and then Gil-galad warned the others, but Sauron tried in Eregion anyway, and there he made, as you also basically said, do the others want you to? I think the exact phrase is, why do Gil-galad does not want you to have a realm as blissful as theirs, or something like this is phrased, I think, in the Silmarillion, which is a very interesting thing. He also praises him like a great king is Gil-galad and a wise lawmaster is Elrond, but why don't they want you to have a blissful realm as well?
Yeah.
And it's a very
Yeah.
interesting point. And then we have a lot of details in different versions, and it's really
Yeah. But he's
fascinating.
totally setting them up at that point.
Yeah,
He's
totally
setting them
setting up.
up against Linden, which is like crazy if you think of it. Or they don't fall for it. They, in a way, he redeems himself, Celebrimbor, last minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's setting elves up against each other, which is very interesting because he knows there's no other way. This is what the Witch King, I think, didn't we do that video? Yeah, we did that video, Chris,
Yeah.
when we
Witch King
talked
video.
about, yeah, when we talked, yeah, exactly. When we talked about, the northern kingdom of Arnor, and this is exactly what the Witch King did with them. He said, like them splitting up, fighting amongst each other makes them weaker, and Sauron knew that, and only weakened elves and not working together elves are beatable elves. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
So,
In addition, there's also an interesting detail that I just realized when the Nature of Middle-earth book came out. There's like
mhm,
another version that goes a bit into detail of this time. Also, work in progress text, of course. So take canon as like
yeah,
it's always debatable with these. And that's mentioned that that Sauron lost a bit of influence, for example, in the East because he had to take taking this form of Anatar.
yeah,
If we read between the lines, seemed to be like such a process that he couldn't just travel into the East and do his Sauron things. He had to stay in this disguise for a very long time.
yeah,
And as a result, in this disguise, the orcs, for example, would just laugh at him and not listen. So there were some rogue orcs, basically, that did their own thing. And he couldn't basically control them. And this is a very interesting thought by Tolkien,
yeah.
published, or that we have now in this text published
That's
last year.
cool. Yeah,
It's a really cool detail. So it was not like he could just phase out back and forth and just do
yeah,
his Sauron business and do
yeah.
his Anatar business at the same time. It was a real commitment to go
Mhm.
for this for deceiving those elves. And
Yeah. And it is way harder. What he did, yes, he was a shapeshifter, right? And even the form he showed himself as Sauron, whatever form, is just a form he chooses, right? But some forms and some, is way harder because these elves are so clever. They're elves that come from the Undying Lands. It's harder to
yeah,
deceive them, or somebody like Kirdan, who's probably an OG elf and old AF. It's way harder to perceive them than, just becoming a bat for 15 minutes and flying away from the battlefield. That is different.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it makes sense what you said. Yeah. Well, I like the version of Celebrimbor taking over power,
Yeah,
influenced by Sauron, and then revolting against them, and then Celeborn staying behind, trying to, saving what's possible and keeping an eye out for them and being basically the spy in there, probably still in contact with, however, with Galadriel and the others, and telling them what's happening here firsthand, right? Firsthand experience, because he
yeah,
sees it with his own eyes. And I like that version because it gives Celebrimbor, it makes his redeem, like in the end he redeemed himself, right, and saw his wrongs. Being a Noldor and of Fëanorian descent is very important because the others didn't have that. They
that's
didn't get
true.
that moment. He's the only one that got that moment. No Medros, none of them. They were all under the doom of Mando. So anything they did led to death and destruction, and they could never escape, right? And he did escape, and he did right, in the end,
Yeah,
at least. So I really like that he gets this. And I rather like a being influenced by evil but then learning your lesson and then redeeming yourself than not having that moment and just being the good guy who forges the rings, right? So I
yeah,
just
exactly.
like that version better because it gives him the character a depth, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure. I agree on that. I also like the idea that that in one text you can read that Sauron perceived that Galadriel would be his chief adversary, and he had to
yes.
endure her scorn. So he had to really
Yeah,
work
this
for it
is,
with uttermost patience,
I
and
know,
he
I
did
want
it.
to see
And
that on
even
film.
yeah, that
Yeah,
would be really cool. And in addition, even not even Galadriel could see through his disguise, which also
yeah.
speaks how much power was behind this disguise.
Hmm.
Also Celeborn was also born in Aman, so or
Yes.
most likely born in Aman, and he couldn't see through it either. And then in the end, they managed to Sauron managed to form this rebellion. That's also the version I like in this. So the redemption arc works much better.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's so many fascinating little details about this time. I tried to really go in a lot of detail in my Elrond and the Second Age video.
Yes. So everybody, the video is linked here. Please check it out. Bring a lot of time.
Yeah, it's long.
It will be after it's long.
There's so many nuances, I think,
I
to it. First of all,
know.
like you already mentioned that in the redemption arc, the other Fëanorians did not have this redemption arc,
No.
and he had to do multiple things. He had to see his mistake. He had to basically what you swallow his pride. I'm not sure if that's the correct phrase for it,
Yeah.
and had to then make contact to he made contact to Galadriel first and
Yeah.
ask her for advice. That also the
Yeah.
person he rebelled against, he now has to ask for help. That is,
Yeah. Yeah.
it takes a strong character basically when you
Yeah.
want to do this. And
Yeah.
another idea I had when I did some research on this was that maybe Sauron also could have worked a bit on the conflict that Celeborn always had with, or the in general the Sindar elves had with the dwarves, and Eregion and the dwarves had a close relationship. You can read that through this relationship, the Eregion became stronger, and Moria
Oh
or
yes.
Khazad-dûm
They
became
both.
fairer.
Yeah, they both profited from each other. That's so
Yeah,
cool and beautiful. Yeah, I made an Eregion video, and I mentioned that there. I
yeah,
really like
it's a very
that.
cool quote.
I like that as well. So yeah, but anyway, we mentioned this before. Galadriel decides to leave. She leaves through Moria, and
Yeah,
again, all this was possible because she was so foresighted and she made friends. And this is very similar to what Gil-galad does in Linden, because he also sees, okay, we need strong allies and friends. We can't do this alone. We can't fight the upcoming evil in the east, from the east, alone. So he did the same with the Numenorians, sending letters to Aldarion's father. Oh, what was his father's, the king's name? Whatever, Aldarion's
Tar
father.
Mineldor, I think.
Minel, I don't know, whatever, his father. And Aldarion brought the letter, and I think he was the fourth king, whatever. And he was very, very similar to Galadriel in that regard. I mean, they were related. So he's Egnor's his grandfather, right? From Gil-galad, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. So again, parentage, to be discussed.
complicated topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Tar Mineldor is the name. Yeah, that
Is it
checked it.
terminal? Okay, good. So yeah, so it is, she is so foresighted and she makes allies. And I think even during the first age, one of her quotes or thoughts is, oh my god, we can't defeat Melkor on our own. Like, this is almost impossible to defeat Melkor on our own. We obviously have to try and do it, but she's very aware of, you need to work together. This is not a one
Yeah,
person fight. So yeah, she goes through Moria, and that now comes into play. And I say that in my video because, come on, people, there are other ways around. There's not just one way. It's not just through Moria. He could have went, up north and then down. Like, there are other ways. Yes, it would take longer. If he really would have wanted to leave Eregion, Celeborn, that is, he could have. There's not just the
yeah,
passage. That's the easy passage and the fast and safe passage, but he could have taken another route. So she gets the ring. Let's talk about the ring. Nenya,
yeah.
I have a question for
Ninja.
you.
Oh,
Do you think? Whoa, Chris is like, whoa, what's happening? Do you think the ring also charged itself and became? See it a bit like a computer game. You like computer games, right? Like, see it as a, like one of those adventure games. Like, does the ring also, because Galadriel is so powerful, and each ring is different and has different powers, right? And they are very fitting to the later owners of the ring, right? They enhance what they already have. But would you also agree that the rings for a time also become, and this is not due to the One Ring, but the rings, and Celebrimbor created them that way, the rings become powerful as well because they also charge and then reflect in a way the energy the owner has. Do you understand what I mean? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I would say that maybe the potential of the owner of the ring definitely also
Yeah,
helps with what the owner can do with the ring.
yeah,
And of course, these rings also had a slightly different purpose of preserving the existing and so on,
yeah,
because um, that is very important things
yeah.
for elves, and to also basically this was
Hmm.
in addition like a powerful tool to establish a realm that
Yeah,
you could protect. I think it definitely has the power of
yeah,
the of a ring definitely helped her later to protect Lothlórien too, and
yeah. And this is
the Third
why
Age.
Elrond was given the ring to establish Imladris.
Rivendell, yeah.
That was one of the reasons he was given the ring. Um, yeah. So no, I think so too. So she becomes even more powerful. She learned all these magic tricks. She has this power within her, and now she's got the ring as well. But she, like, her role becomes more and more, you feel, of, she travels less, she's less there and there and there. She then established the realm, and she becomes more like her father, I feel, in a way, like ruling from one point, making wise decisions, yes, but not, her role is way less active in a way than she was in the first age, and second age, that in the third age, that is, I feel.
Yeah, that's, I guess, definitely that. I mean, this time now after she gets the ring and what she does next exactly is really hard to reconstruct because these sources
Yeah,
now start to really contradicting
yeah,
each other. So
yeah.
there's one mention in the Unfinished Tales that she even goes much further into the south, and there's Iselond, I think there's an elven haven.
Yeah.
Some of the
Yes.
after the end of the first age, some of the elves sailed down to the south and
Mhm.
basically founded
Mhm.
this place there, and she goes into this direction and maybe has influence there. Then you could argue maybe she has to go to Lothlórien. It's really difficult um, where exactly she goes, what happens when. So it's very, for me, always
Mhm.
very hard to answer. We tried to reconstruct it for the Elrond
Mhm.
video, but I had a really hard time doing so,
Yeah.
and combining those different contradicting sources.
Yeah.
Also, now we should mention that in most of these versions, her son is Amros. Only one
Yeah.
version is then not, and then Amdir is Amros'
Yeah.
father, and not Celeborn and Galadriel, though Celebrian was also already there. And yeah, it's kind of a mess. It's really a mess to
Mhm.
reconstruct these details.
Mhm. Yeah. Totally. And now her, well, in the third age, and I feel everything culminates there. And I feel this is her true test. Nothing, losing all her family to the hands of the first and the second Dark Lord, um, losing all of her homes, being homeless for a while, because Doriath was her home for a while, destroyed. Nargothrond was her and her brother's home, destroyed. Whole of Beleriand drowned. Like,
Yeah,
she lost a lot. Then
a
she
lot.
gets this, yeah, then she gets tempted, by Frodo freely offering her um, this ring. And this ring would make a lot of things possible.
Yeah,
And her, withstanding the power of that ring is, I think, literally her biggest task and her biggest accomplishment. Nothing, not tearing down the walls of Dol Guldur, nothing, because she already had a ring and she saw what that minor ring, to compared to the One Ring, could do. you know all her trees, flourished. Her kingdom was protected. Her people were protected. It did good. Um, and so the Valar, this is my version. You can say if you would agree to that. I think the Valar saw all that. And I do think this is the reason she was allowed back. Because there's another version, where I think that's someone during the first age, and they say basically, oh, you still can't come home, by the way, you specifically. And she's like, yeah, I'm not really interested, I'm staying here, bye.
Yeah.
um, that's kind of interesting. um, but the ring she's wearing enhances her wish to go, which is very
Yeah.
sad in a way. So that thing that protects her newfound people and her newfound home and that makes everything flourishes makes her heart so sad that
Yeah.
and that she wants to leave. Yeah, it's so that is also very powerful of her to not give in and stay till the end to see good winning, although she doesn't know, will they even win, will this even lead to anything. But she's really strong, to even not doing and not going into war, she is strong doing this. And yeah, and I think the Valar saw that test and she passed it, and I think they then said, okay, come back.
Yeah, that was, I guess, the final test. Though, as you said, there are versions where this whole Ben story is either there is no Ben for her, then there's a version where it's just for her, then for all the
Specifically for
Noldor,
her, yeah.
and yeah, it's kind of you all can come back except you, Galadriel. You have to stay, Middle Earth. Don't
It's
come
like,
back.
yeah, yeah,
Not welcome
yeah,
here.
yeah,
It's yeah, it's also very, as we talked about. Yeah, it's a mess, and this part is also Tolkien had so many different ideas for this that
yeah.
he created some drafts about. So, but yeah, I agree. Definitely, this was the ultimate test for Galadriel to withstand
Mhm.
the desire to get this ring, get something done, become finally the queen of in Middle Earth that she maybe
Mhm.
wanted to be, and to basically lay this idea to rest and move
Yeah,
on with her life,
yeah.
and then basically become Finarfin
Yeah. And the
in a
good
way.
thing is, yeah, she did. And the good thing is, she learned ruling means different things. Ruling isn't just power, because I really do think she thought ruling over a kingdom is being a king, a, all powerful leader, how she knew Finwë, her grandfather, to be, right? That was the form of kingship she knew. But I do think later on in life she experienced it means to say no to a lot of things, to to it is really hard to be a king. She was wearing that ring for her people, to protect her people, but it made her in a way weaker and sadder and all that. But she did that because she had a family to protect now, and people, and that also means ruling. And that is what I said, and what you just said, she became her father in becoming this wise and different form of king and leader. Yeah, and I like that she learned her lesson and she learned what it really meant. Yeah.
Yeah,
So she's one of my favorite characters, and her journey is really cool. If you know everything about her, because we just know the Lord of the Rings, it's like, okay, she's this mysterious elven witch in this forest, and she has a mirror and whatnot, and she gives out
yeah,
really cool gifts. But no, like, she struggles herself. She is
yeah,
powerful, but she struggles due to that power, and she has to endure so much because she is so powerful and from that family. That means loss, basically, because the
yeah.
Dark Lords have it out for you and your family specifically. Um, yeah,
That is
I
true.
like that. Yeah, good. So
Also,
your
just a
last
detail that
words on her. Yeah. Mhm.
oh, that's it. One detail we maybe wanted to mention, even though at the end of the first age, we can read that one of the hosts is also led by Finarfin, so there would be a chance for her to see her father in Middle
Yeah,
Earth for a brief amount of time,
maybe. Yeah, yeah.
potential.
At the
But
War
that's
of
just
Wrath. Yeah,
speculation.
yeah. It
But
would be cool.
forgot about
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Just
yeah. They're
noticed that.
Yeah, they're the only ones, like in the Undying Lands, back alive. Yeah, but no, I really I like that that story of hers and that journey she goes on, and that she's so active and everywhere, and then
Yeah.
stays and is inactive but active in another way, like active here, foresighted.
Yeah, there's so many
Um,
little nuances. For
mhm.
example, there is I think it's when Eorl goes to help Kirion against the Easterlings in the Third Age.
Yeah, yeah.
There is like a mysterious fog appearing that
Yes,
protects him from the eyes of Sauron's forces
yeah,
potentially,
yeah,
um, so that he could get to this place unknown, and that is close
yeah.
to Lothlórien, which is kind
Hmm.
of a
Yeah,
fascinating detail. And he
yeah,
also speculates that it's Galadriel who is behind this fog.
yeah.
I tried to find it here in the background, the quote, but I couldn't find it fast enough.
Yeah,
And
it's something Melian had taught her. It's a part of the girdle of Melian protection spell thingy, I would say.
yeah, maybe. Interesting idea, but yeah, definitely this shows her power. So there's some
Yeah,
mysterious witch powers you could say
yeah.
she has. It might have to do with, as you said, what Melian taught her. It might have to do with the ring she has because
Ring. Yeah,
she has the ring of water.
yeah.
No, yes,
Fog.
the ring of
Yeah,
water. Fog maybe
yeah,
potentially, though Elrond has a ring of air and he also has floods that he can control.
yeah,
So
yeah,
but
yeah.
there's some ways to protect their realms, and I think
Hmm.
the ring she had, we talked briefly about it, um, could play also a role. Plus, in addition, what she already knew from the first stage, from Melian, for example. It's such so many little interesting details when you say she's active but not active. There's small nuances where you always can also see Galadriel's wisdom and action in it. It's very fascinating.
Hmm. Yeah. Good. So I think we agree she's an epic, great character.
Yes.
Chris, thank you so much for this. I really, really enjoyed this. As always, you're always invited back. Maybe we do something fun on your channel soon. And yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe see her in the show.
Yeah,
So,
me too.
people, we hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for everybody who stayed on. All Chris details will be linked below. And yeah, have a fabulous day, everyone. Thank you. Bye bye, my lovelies.
Bye.